The Pixel Classic, a system in the line of Data East Classics, handhelds, and systems. And in this case, I saw this when I was walking through Staples to pick up ink for printer, and I saw this, and it looked odd to me because it says right on the front, 300 plus games are included, which seems like a stretch considering this is $35. It seems to include a lot of the stuff that Data East was famous for, including Bad Dudes, Joe and Mac, Burger Time. It's all right on the front when you open it up. You can see a bunch of different games, including Side Pocket and Heavy Barrel, all included. But still, for $35, could this system actually be good and worth a purchase? Let's find out.
First things first, let's take a look at the box itself. Overall, the box is nice looking and even has a little door that snaps closed with a small magnet. The system can be seen through a clear plastic window. I like the artwork on the front. It gives a nice nostalgia feel. Enough of that, let's get this system out of the box. You'll notice right away that nothing comes with the system. No cables, no batteries, nothing. It does come with a small instruction booklet that tells you how to use the system, but that's about it. Speaking of batteries, why do these systems need them anymore? Seriously, it's more of a frustration at this point than anything. This system in particular needs 4 AAA batteries. Ugh. AAAs. Okay, now that we have our batteries, let's take a minute to take a small tour of the system. On the left side, we have really large volume up and down buttons. These kind of remind me of that Jitterbug phone a few years ago that used huge buttons because dialing a phone and of course turning up a volume on your handheld is really difficult otherwise. On top of the unit we have AV out, aux out, and 5-volt in ports. Again, no cables come with the system, so you will need to find these cables yourself. The power switch has 2 different settings, one that just turns the system on normally and another setting that illuminates the buttons just in case you forget where they are when playing in the dark. I know keeping track of 4 buttons can be difficult, so thank God for this feature. With the system on, I'm pleasantly surprised by the screen. While the viewing angles are not the best, for $35, this screen actually looks pretty decent. Brightness levels cannot be adjusted, but it does sit at a pretty good default brightness overall. Alright, now let's talk about the included games. They advertise over 300 games being included on this system, and that is technically true, with the little handheld sporting 308 games to be exact. The only issue is that the only games worth playing are the 8 advertised games on the front. All 8 games run well and give you a decent experience. Some of the sound issues with emulating Nintendo games are still present, but frame rate and overall presentation is solid. One weird thing I noticed is that the manufacturer decided to go with Joe and Mac on the front of the box, but then switch over to the lesser known Caveman Ninja title in the menu. You see, the game was originally called Joe and Mac Caveman Ninja during the arcade days and had the Caveman Ninja heading dropped when it made its way westward to the original Nintendo. Why they chose to go with the name that is barely known in the West is anyone's guess. So the 8 advertised games from Data East Library all work well, but what do you have to look forward to from the other 300 games? Well, not much. Now don't get me wrong, not all of the extra 300 games are terrible. For example, they have Checkers and it works well enough. Even Go Fish, while very, very primitive looking, still at least functions alright. But then you get into some of the more original games that were designed for this system in particular to take up space. Now I'm not going to show you every one of these games since honestly some of the games end up being clones of each other and it would take all day to show you each one. Instead, I'll show you just a few to give you an idea of their quality. This game you're seeing now is called Police vs. Thief. It seems like an okay game at first glance, however, no matter which button I press, the police car that I assume I'm controlling is not doing anything. I assume the idea here is to try to catch the renegade car kind of running away from you, the criminals, but I can never seem to make it work. Next up, we have a game called Jumping Kid where, well, you guessed it, you jump. And it really doesn't get much more difficult than what you see on screen now. You kind of walk forward, you hit the B button, and your guy jumps over the obstacle in front of him. This is pretty much the entire game that you're seeing right here, with changes of scenery as you move on in the game. Here's a good one called Man in Red, or as I like to refer to it, Hold B and you win. Riveting. Alright, enough of that. Let's actually get this system apart. Now on the back, there are 4 Phillips head screws that get you inside. It's pretty straightforward to get this apart. Now once inside, you'll notice everything's soldered together, and that's because these systems where they're trying to save a lot of money, basically any bit they can, they tend to just solder everything together and kind of forego any modular connections. Next up, it's time to take the very cheap looking motherboard out of the system. There's only a few screws that hold this in, also Phillips head screws, and then the entire thing comes out. Alright, now let's take a quick look at the button connections. It looks like they are using rubber membrane, and that's great because that'll actually give you a decent tactile click, and mostly it does. The screen looks like it might be one of those backup camera screens that plug in, and they're okay. That's why I said the screen at least looked decent when I was checking it out earlier, but it's nothing special overall. To achieve NES emulation, it looks like they are using a standard system on a chip under that glob top. That works fine. Below that is the flash storage, and it comes in a couple different varieties after I looked up the chip. It either comes in 32 megabytes, 64 megabytes, or 128 megabytes. If I had to take a guess, based on how cheap the system is, it's either a 32 megabyte or a 64 megabyte. Now I know what you're wondering, is it worth the $35 it sells for? And really, that depends. Do you like Data East games enough to spend $35 to play them on the go? Keep in mind the only real games that are worth the purchase are the 8 games that are advertised on the front. And looking around, there are better options out there that won't eat up 4 AAA batteries, for example, between every charge. If this system had a rechargeable battery and a slightly better screen, this would have been a pretty good little system for what it is. Overall, I think this handheld would work great for a younger gamer who might be rough with electronics and maybe just wants something to keep them occupied. Otherwise, I would pass on this handheld for now and maybe reevaluate if they decide to update the system with an internal battery and a new screen. That's it for the Pixel Classic from Data East. If you're new here, consider subscribing and press the like button if you enjoy these types of videos. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.